We are those guys. Hey, you see these guys over there? What about those guys? I'm Alex Hardy. He's Nick Ferguson, 10-year safety in the National Football League. And that is, well, that's what we're ready to talk about, Nick. We're here. We made it. The Philadelphia Eagles, a successful start to their Super Bowl defense, beating the Dallas Cowboys on NFL opening night kickoff Thursday, 24-20 in a rainy affair. Look, it was close, but the team that looked better, especially on the ground, got the dub. What's going on, Nick Ferguson?
Hey man, football is back, and I have to tell you, it is very difficult to win at home, especially when you are hoisting up a trophy and there's a lot of fanfare before the game and trying to keep your guys kind of engaged. If you're Nick Sirianni, I mean, that's very difficult. Obviously, you're celebrating the year that was prior, but now you're looking forward to a new season. And it was a very competitive game. To be totally honest, I actually picked the over on this game because
No.
well, you know what? Because I figured as though it's the first game of the season. You're not really seeing a lot of those starters during the preseason. And the first game of the regular season is just an extension of the preseason. So I
Right.
figured that it was going to be some fireworks. Dallas had something to prove, no Micah Parson. And I would say, even though in the loss, they did prove that they're going to be competitive this season.
Well, it was rough, right? Because you had, what was it? You had 41 points in the first half, only to get three in the entire second half, including a long extended rain delay. I was doing a victory lap because look, the game's important, but getting the kids ready for bed is more important. Put the kids down for sleep, pop back out, realize, oh, there was a delay. I haven't missed any of this. Like it was honestly the best start for me coming back into the season. But look, we got a lot of scoring right out the gate. I believe there were touchdowns or scoring plays, I should say, on the first, 6 or 7 drives right out the gate.
Yeah.
They were going up and down the field on each other. And that was with good sets of weapons on each team, but we'll get to sort of the specifics of it. Certain players completely disappeared from the box scores. So do you want to start with the Eagles side of it, Nick, and the effectiveness on their running game? Like, look, talked about how the tush push is still very much a part of our lives, and it was almost as if the Philadelphia Eagles wanted to remind us of that, but not just the tush push. Jalen Hurts scrambling and converting multiple third downs with his legs.
Well, let's start there with the Philadelphia Eagles because there's so much to unpack. The first thing
Mm-hmm.
that I have to say coming
You want to get to
into
the first play of the game?
no, I'll kind of we'll just circle back to it, but I wanted to talk
Okay.
specifically about Jalen Hurts because this past offseason there were lists, and every offseason there is a list, and usually there are players left off the list or not adequately placed on the list. And Jalen Hurts was one of those guys when he wasn't perceived as being one of the top 5 quarterbacks in the NFL, and there were pundits, prognosticators, former quarterbacks who had things that they wanted to say about Jalen Hurts and who he was, or better yet, who he wasn't. I mean, the guy proved as though he is an NFL quarterback. He deserves to
Right.
be in the top 5. And he showed that tonight, even though A.J. Brown didn't catch a pass into the fourth quarter, Jalen Hurts still showed that he is the oil that greases the engines for the Philadelphia Eagles. I'll stop there because if I don't, we'll be here all night.
Well, listen, it's spreading the ball out, getting guys involved, and your top 2 pass catchers in A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith combined for 4 catches for 24 yards in a 60-minute football game. That's where you get some sort of boo birds and criticism because that's what a quarterback is supposed to do, right? Throw to his multi-million-dollar receivers, get the scoreboard broken by scoring every single drive that you can. I didn't necessarily do that. However, clearly this Eagles team, he is the engine. He is the straw that stirs the drink, especially when Saquon gets bottled up, I think less than 3.5 yards per carry. A point of emphasis, kudos to Jerry. They're slowing down that run without Micah Parsons being there. And we'll get to that as well. So the first play of the game, how different do you think that Eagles defense looks? Not with Milton Williams in New England, not with C.J. Gardner-Johnson in Houston, but with Jalen Carter ejected for retaliating to Dak Prescott. They showed the replay a couple of times. This is very straightforward, Nick. I learned this in high school soccer. They never give the guy who makes the first offense the red card. If you retaliate, that's when you get thrown out of the game. And that's what happened to Jalen Carter in a spot that, look, even if he wasn't one of the best players on that defense, you absolutely cannot do in any point of the game, let alone the first start of the first game of the season.
No, you don't want to do that. And once again, I saw it in HD. It was like 4K, like another guy spitting at another guy. It just kind of this projectile coming out of his mouth, and the way that it was first shown, it just looked as though it was just Jalen Carter. But seeing it from a different angle, you saw Dak Prescott spit, but Jason Garrett, at being a former player of the Dallas Cowboys and former coach for Dak Prescott, well, the way that he tried to portray it was that, well, Dak was just spitting on the ground and he was talking
Ah, yes.
to his offensive lineman at the time. But Jalen Carter standing there when there's a player on his team injured, don't try to antagonize the opponent. And I know what he's trying to do. We've seen it in college football. Guys go to the middle of the hash and someone's got to stand in front of them to keep them apart. But for me, seeing it now to see Dak spitting on the ground, how Carter responded in his way, I would say, you know what? Going back to Bill Parcells and George O'Leary, you have to maintain your cool. You can't allow another guy to get under your skin. And you had to figure that was going to happen, Alex. This game was really chippy. When you got two divisional teams, Dallas trying to prove themselves, and Philadelphia is trying to show that they are still the biggest dog on the block.
That's right. And I almost wonder what the dynamic is if Carter's ejected, sitting in the locker room, then everybody else comes back in during that hour-long rain delay. He's just looking around like, "Oh, I gotta deal with you guys. I thought I could be, off in my own space and nobody would be, staring daggers at me because I'm the one that made the big mistake in this game." I don't think that's necessarily how it goes down. That's just how I envision all locker rooms being.
Well, I mean, he was listening to Patti LaBelle on my own, but then when everyone came back into the locker room, he realized that he was going to have to deal with them more sooner rather than later. And you have to figure, I mean, that has to be the quickest ejection that we've ever seen in any pro sport, let alone the NFL. And then if you're Vic Fangio, you're just sitting down, you're putting your boards, you're putting your drink down, and then someone whispers in your ear, "Hey, coach, we're going to be without Jalen Carter." Well, is he injured? Was he late for the game? It's like, no, he got ejected, right? So now that changes your game plan as far as what you want to do, because think about it this way. Vic Fangio, everything has been leading up to this particular game. You've been practicing so many things, and now that took them out of rhythm. And that was probably the reason that the Dallas Cowboys were able to rush the ball the way that they did.
That's right. And, we looked at the consistency on defense and some of the moving parts. I'm trying to recall when we did our season previews, and again, only one football game in the books. If you want to listen to each division, we break down our previews, make some picks on who wins those divisions. Feel free to those guys' podcast, YouTube's channels. You'll be able to find all of those. When we talked about the Eagles coming in, there was turnover at offensive coordinator and some of the skill players and plenty of pieces on the defensive line, but the consistency that Vic Fangio brings, and those guys played for him. This was the best defense in the league last year, but there were some cracks that showed that one, Dallas has a potent offense, and two, the Eagles' strength isn't going to show itself in week one. They're much better in the second half of the season. And we can, go on about the reigning Super Bowl champions, but let's talk about the Dallas Cowboys as well. The holes in the Eagles defense or kind of the strength of that Cowboys offense, Nick. We'll get to CD Lamb's issues, but the addition of George Pickens may not have been quite as involved again on the box score, but what was his addition, and having just a second playmaker on that Dallas offense, what did that do for them compared to what we watched from them a year ago?
Well, what it did for CD Lamb is kind of free him up. So
Yeah.
now, and we didn't really see a lot of George Pickens in the game, but as the season goes on, you're going to see those targets start to pick up. So now it's going to force defensive coordinators to start running a little more zone. And when you run zone against Dallas, that's exactly what they want because now guys can find the soft spots, sit downs, and they can run from east to west or from left to right if you want to look at it that way. So now,
Most importantly, I mean, I don't mean to cut you off, but most importantly, you talked about this with Jalen Hurts. Dak Prescott wants that as well. He was making those throws all night, despite some of those drops from CD. And listen, may not have counted as catches, but George Pickens drawing those PIs just as important.
yeah, those are drive extenders because usually in situations like this, and we've seen Joe Flacco make a career out of it in Baltimore. I call it I call it like you throwing a chicken down the field, and you're hoping that the officials kind of bail you out. And with Joe Flacco, that helped him out. But sometimes, you know what? It's better to be lucky than good. I call it those types of plays were a chicken wing and a prayer type of things.
Yeah, I mean,
And
Pickens kind of made it part of his MO in Pittsburgh. I think he led the league at one point or even back-to-back years with penalty yards on those pass interferences. So it's sort of baked in, even though it doesn't show up in fantasy or box scores. But it can be a huge part of that offense that, like you said, freed up CeeDee Lamb, who was making barbecue chicken out of that Eagles secondary.
Well, it's interesting you talk about that, and I know, Jeffrey Lurie, when the Eagles, after they won the Super Bowl, they thought they were going to pull, I guess they looked at Patriots' book of how to run an organization, and we're going to get rid of players 2 or 3 years earlier. And right now, that's not serving them well. And you play in Dallas, and you say you have CeeDee Lamb, you got George Pickens, but there are going to be some other teams you're going to play that are going to have a plethora of wide receivers. And right now, what the Eagles were scrambling to do is trying to find the right mix at the corner position. And you can see with CeeDee Lamb and George Pickens, they were able to get their way. When you look at CeeDee Lamb, more than 100 yards receiving, no touchdowns, right? 13 targets.
Yeah, yeah,
But once
13
again,
targets, came down with 7 of them,
yeah,
110 yards.
yeah. So that's going to be an issue for the Eagles definitely moving forward. But you know what? Alex, I was happy with what I saw from the Dallas Cowboys being able to move the ball down the field, keep sustain drives, being able to distribute the ball to different wide receivers. So what we saw from the Cowboys in week 1 has now made the NFC East more interesting.
Yep, I'm looking forward to talk about other teams Dallas will play with weapons. I immediately thought of the Commanders with Terry McLaurin and Jaden Daniels has his legs, the additions of Deebo Samuel, and
Yes.
so that'll be pretty exciting to look forward to. As we continue, we're still getting our rhythm, Nick, but coming off a Thursday night, it's important to focus on that game. But we scratch that itch a little bit. We got our first game in. That just makes me think of the next game we're going to be getting in, which
The
is
next
South
game,
Sao Paulo, Brazil. You've got an AFC West division rivalry, a Chargers home game in Brazil, hosting those Kansas City Chiefs. I mean, your impressions compared to, I don't know, what we have coming in with both of these teams, and what was a compelling Packers victory in Brazil a year ago against the Eagles. Or
well, for the
Eagles win that
Chargers,
game? I don't even
yeah,
remember.
but for the Chargers, it's going to be rookie Morgan Hampton. And, Coach Harbaugh coming from Michigan, they wanted a big back. They want to be able to run the ball. They want a guy with dynamic playmaking ability and the passing game and the running game. They got that in Amari Hampton. So the world will get an opportunity to see this young man carry the ball and catch the ball out of the backfield. But the Chargers, once again, are a very intriguing team. Can they be explosive? More importantly, can they protect their quarterback? We know one of
Right.
the tackles, he's out. And how do you formulate or build your offense to make sure that you keep Herbert upright? Because you don't want him to get injured early in the season because now that would derail whatever thoughts they had of this team making a deep run.
Well, listen, I first want to clear up the Eagles beat the Packers in Sao Paulo week 1 last year, a little foreshadowing to what would come for the rest of the season. And the Chargers lose the best left tackle that they've had, and he became the highest paid right before. I think they're the only team whose contingency plan was to install a former top 5 overall pick at left tackle. So having Joe Alt there is a huge backup plan for them. But at the same time, they only get that much weaker. It's next man up on the rest of the offensive line. So I'm curious to see Omarion Hampton and Najee looking like he'll be ready to mix in a little bit, but we haven't seen him at all, given the 4th of July incident. So the running game is going to be huge for them, especially when you're trying to set the tone and beat Kansas City at their own game. Because last year, when the offense wasn't fully clicking, they were winning games by dominating time of possession, making sure their defense was well rested, and then being able to have the ball last, which, other than that time your Denver Broncos got their field goal blocked, that Kansas City offense were able to close out games.
Why you got to bring that up, man? Why you got to bring that up?
It's only twice, and we've played one NFL game. Like you cut me some slack. I could keep going here. I wonder if Jim Harbaugh's game script is one that matches what Andy Reid wants to do, and if we're going to see a low-scoring, slow-moving affair with just a team that gets the ball last winning the game.
Yeah, I kind of look at it that way because once again, we look at Kansas City, we hadn't really seen their offense play a lot that first game. It was just kind of they had a turnover, Patrick Mahomes on a 9-yard line, touchdown out of the game. So now you want to see some frequency from that offense. Can they really put long drives together? We know the Kansas City Chiefs know how to finish. And that's the one thing I'm sure Coach Harbaugh is telling his team. He's just like, look, we've watched the Kansas City Chiefs do it time and time out last season when they were able to close out games. If you want to beat the Kansas City Chiefs team, this is me paraphrasing, giving you what I believe that Coach Harbaugh's speech is going to be or was for his team the night before the game, is that, well, we have to learn how to finish games. Starting early, forcing Kansas City to chase, giving our defensive line the time to get upfield, but we have to set the tone because we know that this team can finish, and it doesn't make a difference how we start. It doesn't make a difference if we are ahead or we're behind. That is the motto, the continuation of finishing the freaking game.
Well, yeah, it's going to be hard to just sustain that when Kansas City continues to do what they've done best for the last few years. If they've figured out how to take the top off of opposing defenses, if Xavier Worthy gets in the mix, even Tyquan Thornton just running deep corners and creating some kind of spread on the defense, they could be in a better position and make it harder on defenses to sort of stick to their script rather. So that's an intriguing one because we came off of an exciting division game on Thursday night. We have one for Friday. And I think one on Sunday would be the Lions and the Packers because we saw our Kenny Clark debut for Dallas tonight, but you have Micah Parsons making his Packers debut already in that green and cheese. And I'm just... The Packers have gone out, since we talked about them, because the NFC North was one of our first season previews, really the point hammers home that, look, the Packers are making big swings with taking their first-round wide receiver since Javon Walker, Broncos legend, and following it up with trading and paying an elite defensive player instead of retaining one of their own as they traditionally would do. So is this kind of huge swing that they're taking big enough for them to leapfrog over the Detroit Lions? And all we did was talk about the changes that they've made in their coaching staff and on their lines, especially the offensive line this offseason.
Yeah, if you were to look at the Detroit Lions in this matchup, which group has the uncertainty? It would be the Lions because
all of a sudden
there's no more Ben Johnson, right? There's no more Aaron Glenn. So you're wondering what will the offensive and defensive side actually look like? And let's be fully honest, when we look at the Detroit Lions secondary, they were not the best. Aiden Hutchinson got injured, and that derailed a lot of things for that team. And when you look at the Green Bay Packers, they've been here before. They've done this before. Reggie White, when you had Brett Favre, was a quarterback. So they realized, and Brian Gutekunst realizes, like, look, we are in our window. Right? We are in our window, and we've competed with the Detroit Lions and the San Francisco 49ers, but we needed one game wrecking player, not game changing, game wrecking. And Kenny Clark, great, a decent interior guy for the Green Bay Packers, but we know
Hey,
how.
hey, less than 3.5 yards a carry for Saquon. All right, that's all on Kenny Clark. Okay.
Oh, okay. Well, the Cowboys didn't win the game, so it didn't really change anything. But the idea is the way that you impact quarterbacks. You have to impact the quarterbacks with the pass rusher. And I don't know about you. Kenny Clark wasn't Aaron Donald. He wasn't Warren Sapp. And you get a lot of that pressure, Alex, from the edge. And when you think about Micah Parsons, he is one of those guys that you plan for. He's one of those guys that if you are a tackle right, left, you are having sleepless nights. Now, the only thing that's in question is, will Micah Parsons play and will he be on the pitch count? Because we all know where, that issue with the back is not something fictitious. It is something that's a real thing.
Yeah, I think just trying to get the revenge tour on the Dallas Cowboys. I think taking the epidural in the first place, he's doing everything he can to make sure he's on the field, because as much as he's there to help the Packers, he's there to create a statement of his own. And look, his podcast is a lot more compelling. Like, look, I'm rooting for the guy on the football field, and if he plays, it makes for a much more interesting pod. But the fact that we're competing with him in terms of the sports podcast rankings, I mean, if he doesn't play, I think that serves us well. I mean, keeping the main thing, Nick. Like, rate, and subscribe to those guys' podcast, YouTube, wherever you can find us. And one day, we will come after Micah Parsons like we're coming off the edge. What do you say, Nick?
Well, hey, listen, man, I'm all for it, man. You make more money when you get to the quarterback and you impact the quarterback. That's why all these guys are making so much money. I mean, Nick Bonito just got a bag. I mean, he's got a couple of bags that he said he was even crying. He wasn't crying tears of suffering. He was crying tears of joy. I want some of
What
those
do you do?
types of tears.
Yeah, what are you doing for your Broncos on Sunday? You've got the Titans' #1 overall pick, Cam Ward, in town, a revamped offense with Tony Pollard and Calvin Ridley and the veterans that they had on the offensive line. What do you got going on with your Denver Broncos this weekend, Nick?
Well, obviously, I think the Broncos are favored by 8 points. I think that's the
Yeah.
largest this weekend and weekend's games. But
Yep, same number as the Eagles, but the Cowboys did cover.
yeah, the idea is not to take any team, for granted just because they have a rookie quarterback, because there's a flip side to that, right? You may think as though they are a team that's thinking inward, they're not thinking outward, and they're not thinking that they can win this game. They may be motivated because the pressure is all on the Broncos. It's not on the Titans. So all Cam Ward has to do is come in, start fast, don't turn the ball over, and then hope that his defense can get some stops and turn the ball over, so maybe they can win a game on a late field goal.
Close one in Tennessee. I'm interested. Can you tell me, being a Denver, Colorado resident, what is altitude like, playing in altitude when it's like 80 degrees? Because obviously there's a big difference when it's cold and bitter, and we get into the Novembers, Decembers. But what kind of heat are the Titans and the Broncos both dealing with when you're a mile above sea level and it's a hot day out?
Well, I mean, hot is hot, but it's not Texas hot. It's not
You're closer to
Louisiana.
the sun, Nick. What do you mean?
Yeah, I know we are closer to the sun, but we don't have that humidity, and we don't have a large body of water where that humidity impacts your body. So, yes, it will be hot, but it will not be as hot as maybe Arizona. Now, if you want to know what it's like to play in the altitude, all you have to do, close your mouth and pinch your nose, right? And I would say don't do that for a long period of time or you might pass out, right? But that's what it feels like. It feels as though your lungs start to burn. And knowing as though you are a well-conditioned athlete, it is a different level of breathing, because now we're talking about not just your lungs, but the blood oxygen that you have in your body. It makes it really difficult, which is why I hope Sean Payton finally listens to me. I can hope and pray. Can I? I can hope and pray. But that the team runs tempo. Get those big guys on the opposite side of the ball for the Titans, get them huffing and puffing, looking at the sideline, hands on knees. That's what you want to do to that team. But if the Broncos don't do that, and with each possession they allow the Titans to build more confident, that makes the game more difficult for the Broncos.
This is an RJ Harvey question disguised as more of a vague, generic, let's talk about as many rookies as we possibly can. We just saw Jaden Blue a healthy scratch for the Dallas Cowboys on Thursday Night Football. Week 1, what are you trying to learn from your young guys? And is it, perish the thought, do we think about how Sean Payton deploys and uses his skill players week 1? Do we read into anything that he's said this offseason? Is RJ Harvey or any other rookie going to get less run traditionally? And that even includes Amarian Hampton, who you touched on earlier. Do the rookies kind of have to visualize and see what a game looks like before they really get the trust from their head coaches?
No,
Specifically RJ Harvey?
right. No, because and here's the reason why. See, when you sign off on the player and you designate that player as my guy, I chose him for this particular reason. And consider this, the Broncos did not run the ball well over the last 2 years. And the last 100-yard rusher, if I'm not mistaken, was former New Orleans Saints, Dallas Cowboys, Latavius Murray. So the Broncos want to establish the run. So if the Broncos don't commit to the run, a la Sean Payton, then that means that everything he said this offseason, why he went out and grabbed 2 backs, and why it was so important for them to run the ball, and saying the guys last year, Javonte Williams, who happened to score 2 touchdowns in the game against Philly, that those guys were inadequate. So he has to be committed to it. Remember, it was on a Thursday night game against the Chargers that Coach Payton wrote on his call sheet, right? I think he wrote it on the wrong side, but we all saw it. It said, run the ball. So if he doesn't commit to the run, he in essence going to make himself look really bad.
I appreciate that, Nick. And we could go on and talk about every single game, and I apologize that we don't. We're certainly going to be able to react to every game. I think that's our intention when we do come back. But Nick, before we head on out of here and we look at week 1, Sunday Night Football, Bills, Ravens, does the winner of that game, does their quarterback automatically become the MVP between Josh Allen and Lamar?
No, because as we learned in years past, it's a long, arduous season. Now, does the winner of that game put themselves out a couple of horses ahead? Absolutely. But now the pressure will be on that guy to keep that distance, to keep that pace. But for me, it's going to be a great game. And Mark Andrews is returning to the scene of the crime once again, where he dropped a couple of passes that could have helped his Baltimore Ravens team. I'm thinking, because I've seen things like this in the past. Usually when a player returns to a place where he didn't play well, the team makes it a point of emphasis of trying to get him involved. I hope Todd Monken doesn't overdo it, because, I mean, they got some great offensive weapons on that Baltimore Ravens team.
Now, I would be remiss not to do this, Nick. This is our last opportunity to do it. Maybe we're a day late since the Eagles already played, but we've got to talk about our let's get it. We'll write it down on paper. I'll just take it from here. Nick Ferguson, I'm Alex Hardy. We are those guys. Let's make our Super Bowl predictions. Nick, who do you have winning the Super Bowl? Who's representing the AFC? Who's representing the NFC? Anything else you want to touch on as to why you have this Super Bowl pick?
Well, I'm going to say there's going to be a team from the NFC and a team from the AFC in the Super Bowl, right? Because I don't like to do predictions, because so many things that can happen before we get to that point, because the person or the team that you toss out there, 1 or 2 injuries, and that derails the whole thing. So I would say table it for a second. If you want to give me yours, I'll take it. But I want to table mine until about week 4 or week 5. That'll give me some idea of what we're dealing with. Why are you shaking your head? Why are you shaking your head?
Because this time a year ago, I had the Philadelphia Eagles winning the Super Bowl, Nick. How did I do?
Well, I mean, I don't recall that, but if you say so, yeah, it worked out.
If you go to my Instagram or those guys on Instagram, I'll get the hell. I'm at Alster9. You can find where I said it, and you are tagged in it as well at Nick Ferguson _25. I had the Eagles over the Ravens. I got the part that mattered correct. This year. Well, I'm just saying, I think I had all the division winners and then I picked a Super Bowl. I didn't get all the division winners. I didn't get all the wild card playoff teams correct. So maybe that process is a little bit of a fool's errand.
Okay,
but I will say, Nick.
So Nostradamus, grace us with your presence and tell us what two teams are going to be in and who's going to finally win it.
The easier thing for me was to pick the Super Bowl loser. I think the
Okay.
benefit of having the number one schedule in terms of the Vegas, like in terms of the easiest schedule in terms of Vegas projected win totals, like the San Francisco 49ers have by and large the easiest schedule facing all of the AFC South, the NFC South. I think I touched on that in our season preview. However, the AFC is such a gauntlet, and we saw it this past year, that those teams, iron sharpens iron, and then they kind of just, cannibalize themselves in a sense. So by the time Kansas City got there, Buffalo, Baltimore, all of these teams really, took a lot out of them. But the AFC gets it over the top this year. I really do think that your Denver Broncos are going to lose to the Houston Texans in the AFC Championship game. Give me the Houston Texans somehow pulling out a running game and an improved offensive line that we can't necessarily see right now over those San Francisco 49ers. The franchise's first ever Super Bowl and a Nick Ferguson AFC Championship game right there. Texans
Wow.
Broncos.
Listen, that's very interesting because those are two of my former teams, but I
That's
didn't.
exactly my point. It's the Nick Ferg Bowl.
Okay, I did not anticipate that, but I'm actually here for it. I thought you would go more of the two teams that are playing on Sunday night, the Baltimore Ravens and Josh Allen led
It's
Buffalo
tough.
Bills.
Obviously, they're the best. They're the best teams. They have the best quarterback play. But there's just something that says to me, a year ago, each of them had an opportunity to unseat the Kansas City Chiefs. They were vulnerable. They were at their weakest, and they just couldn't do it. I would love for it to be the time for Josh Allen to win, not the Buffalo Bills, because they won 5 straight division championships. No, they don't. They don't come anywhere near what the New England Patriots were capable of at their peak. So I don't think they deserve or are entitled to anything. And Baltimore, I just need to see it to believe it. I mean, I could be totally wrong on the Ravens. Like I just said, I had them in the Super Bowl a year ago, and they still look too far away from me. So I just wanted to pick an unexpected team that may have an easier path to get to a postseason berth, like the Texans do out of the AFC South. And I don't necessarily see it right now. If we get Joe Mixon to come back in the second half of the year, they get some continuity on that offensive line after all that turnover. The key to them winning a Super Bowl, or for any team for that matter, is running the damn ball. And if Sean Payton smudges that Sharpie he wrote on his play sheet and your Broncos forget to run the football when they need to, that's
Uh,
what's going to hold them back.
well, once again, that's music to the ears of so many Mile High fans to see the Broncos in an AFC Championship game against the Houston Texans. So, like I said, sign me up for it. I'm not sure it's going to happen that way, but we'll see.
Well, I've been right before. I've been wrong more often, but that's why I have Nick Ferguson with me, a 10-year NFL veteran who will correct me along the way. Please join us throughout this entire NFL season. I can't wait to be here with you. The goal is to be here twice a week to preview the week's games and also react to them as well. I'm Alex Hardy. He's Nick Ferguson. We are those guys. You see these guys all the way over there? Look at them. Hey, look at us. Look at those guys. How about you ride along with us? We will be back, week 1 reaction, recap, and I guess we'll find out whether or not the Houston Texans win the Super Bowl by the next time we see each other. Nick Ferguson, on our way out, what do you have to say to the people?
Hey, remember, thick fat is greasy.
Facts. Fat facts.
It's greasy.